Susan Goldenberg is the author of 10 books and owns both Canadian Authors Award and a Canadian Business Press Editors Award. She has written for the Sunday New York Times, the Financial Post, and the Financial Times of Canada, and pens articles for the Canada's History magazine. She also writes for Toronto's Heritage column. Another identity of Susan Goldenberg is the director of the North York Historical Society. She explores local history of North York from different sources and presents it vividly to her readers. Today, let's meet this respectable author and learn more about her story.
For Susan Goldenberg's loyal readers, October 15th is a special day because Susan will have a book signing event for her 10th book, Deadly Triangle, at the Indigo Yonge and Eglinton Centre. The book is released on October 11th, 2022 and is currently selling in bookstores. Deadly Triangle tells the story of the 1935 murder of world-famous architect Francis Mawson Rattenbury and the arrest and trial of his younger wife Alma and George Percy Stoner, the family's chauffeur and her lover. At the book signing event site, Susan introduces her new book to readers and signs books for book buyers. We are very fortunate that Susan accepted our interview. Ms. Goldenberg, thank you for accepting the interview and giving us the opportunity to learn more about your writing life and the stories related to your work. What inspired you to write this book?
It's rather a long story. I was looking through a list of prominent Canadians, just idly looking through it, and it was done by occupation. So naturally I started with A, went down to architects, and I saw that the name Francis Rattenbury, the man who was killed, the focus of this story, was listed near the top when I thought it should have been normally listed near the bottom alphabetically. So I looked him up, and I saw that he had designed the BC Legislature and the Empress Hotel in Victoria, which are iconic buildings, and which I happen to have seen myself. And when I looked a bit into the story behind those buildings and behind Rattenbury, I saw it was a nice juicy scandal and a murder, which is what an author really likes.
Ms. Goldenberg, when did you start to write it? How much time did it take for you to complete finishing the book?
I started 3 years ago. It took a very long time because just after I started, COVID struck. And this book depended to a certain extent on archives and libraries, and they were shut. So I had to find a way around that. I found the transcript of the trial, online, which shows how much interest there still is in the subject. And I was able to find some other things online, and then I got memoirs from various sources.
Ms. Goldenberg, what do you hope people would learn from your book?
Well, it's a true crime story, so I'd like to learn the story itself. And then there are parallels between what was going on then and what's going on today regarding women's rights or lack thereof, what goes on in trials, social strata distinctions. So I wanted to bring that out too.
We are very lucky to be invited to participate in another of Ms. Goldenberg's book launch at the Sleuth of Baker Street on November the 5th, 2022. During the book launch, Ms. Goldenberg talked with her readers and autographed her books for them. Ms. Goldenberg also read some excerpts from The Deadly Triangle and did a book talk for her readers.
I found an article of the time in the Daily Mirror of that era, which happened to have a picture of all three on the page. So I got the page. and at a fraction of what Getty would have charged. So I'm very smug about that.
From Miss Goldenberg's first book, Men of Property, in 1981, to her 10th book, Deadly Triangle, in 2022, Miss Goldenberg has insisted on writing for more than 40 years. Miss Goldenberg, we know that you have written on a wide range of topics in your 10 books, from business to real crime. As readers of your book, we are very interested in knowing the background for you writing these books.
The first book I wrote was on the Canadian real estate developers when they were at their very peak. And it went into the United States, and I'd written a few newspaper articles about it, and it finally dawned on me it would make a good book. And then I wrote on a number of companies, sagas, Canadian Pacific, which at the time was a very large company, and the Thompson Empire, which consisted of newspapers, oil and gas, Hudson's Bay Company, travel business, books, and had gone through a fair amount of turmoil. And it was started in Canada by a colorful man named Roy Thompson, and he was succeeded by his son Kenneth Thompson, who was less colorful but very interesting. And they went on to write a book on the world's leading stock exchanges and international joint ventures, for part of which I went to China. And then I remembered that many years ago I'd written a story on the 1934 kidnapping of beer tycoon John Labatt. And somebody suggested to me at that time that I write a book, and I foolishly ignored the advice. And so I returned to the advice 20 years later. So that was my first true crime book, and this is my second.
Miss Goldenberg, your new book is about real cases that occurred in Canadian history. You've also written a lot about real cases on the North Historical Society website. Why do you like to write about and follow crime topics in your various books?
Well, the full title is Snatched, the Peculiar Kidnapping of Beer Tycoon John Labatt. And I wrote about it because it was the first kidnapping of a major figure in Canada. It was the first kidnapping to go to trial. It was the first kidnapping when the wrong person was convicted. And it turned out, strangely, to have its share of rather peculiar humor. For instance, the kidnappers, they had taken Labatt from near London up to where the company is, up to a hideout in Muskoka. And when they decided to take him, release him, because the police were hot on their heels, they drove him to Toronto, let him out in central Toronto, gave him cab fare, and for money they'd stolen from him, gave him directions to the Royal York Hotel where his brother was waiting for him, and then some subsequent humor. He got to the hotel, and there were some newspaper people there and detectives, and nobody recognized him. So he went up to the front desk. The clerk didn't recognize him. He identified himself and was taken up to see his brother.
Miss Goldenberg, we know that you are the director of the North York Historical Society and also an active writer of North York history. I have read many articles you have written that were published on the Historical Society's website. Your articles are very important sources for people to be aware of local history. Could you talk about when you started to join the Historical Society?
As I recall, it was 2012.
Ms. Goldenberg, when did you start to write articles for the North York Historical Society's website?
I started right away for the Society, and then it went into the Society's newsletter. I started doing them for Toronto.com, the North York Mirror, in 2018, and I've now done, they're published monthly. I've now done over 50.
Ms. Goldenberg, how did you find issues to write about?
a number of ways. There is a book called Pioneering in North York by Patricia Hart, so that's a good place to start. Then I just looked around North York and saw what's of interest and went from there.
Miss Goldenberg talks about her family and how they influenced her writing.
My mother was born in Los Angeles. Her mother was born in England and her father in Russia. My father was born in Toronto and his parents were born in Romania. When I was a child, it was the practice at family meals to discuss events in the news. And I was steeped in culture. I've always loved reading. Started reading very young as a child, thanks to my parents.
Miss Goldenberg talks about her educational background and the unforgettable experience.
Grade school, Allenby Public School, which is near Eglinton and Avenue Road. And apparently was once an indigenous site. They found some indigenous artifacts fairly recently. We never knew that when we went to school. Then I went to North Toronto Collegiate, which is near Yonge and Eglinton. I went subsequently to the University of Toronto. I took history and economics. And then I went to Northwestern University. When I started out writing, I was very lucky. I started out with a neighborhood newspaper, and they sort of mentored me. And then I wrote for a general interest magazine put out by Ontario Hydro. Same thing happened where they were nice to me. And then I did some writing for the freelance writing for the Globe, and again, the managing editor was very nice.
Miss Goldenberg, after fans finish reading your 10th book, they are very interested in your day-to-day life, as well as any future works that you may be thinking of starting.
I'm working on another one, which I plan to submit it for review fairly soon. And there are some other things that are in the works that I'm not at liberty to discuss at this point.
Miss Goldenberg, what does a normal day in your life look like now?
Now that I'm older, I'm not going to say how old, but older, much older, I split it between writing and volunteering. And when I'm writing, I start very early. Sometimes I've even started at 4:30 or 5. Now, Peter C. Newman is a very famous Canadian writer, starts at 4, so I'm a sluggard compared to him. And I generally use very early in the morning. I may answer before 7 o'clock. Before 6 o'clock, I answer emails. And then I mainly write in the morning and take a little rest, and then write in the afternoon, and then write in the evening. And because the type of writing I do entails research, I do a lot of research at libraries and archives, and some interviewing.
Miss Goldenberg, what do you hope to say to people in your generation?
We did well. We served the community as best we could.
We asked Miss Goldenberg to provide some suggestions to youth who aspire to be an author like her. In Miss Goldenberg's responding letter, she recommended writing courses, intriguing topics, and publishers to aspiring writers. She also highlighted the basic skills of being a writer, such as having a broad span of knowledge, reading, being able to conduct and organize heavy amounts of research, as well as establishing a regular routine and sticking to it. Furthermore, Ms. Goldenberg also reminds youth the reality of life for an author. It's largely solitary. You can put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, invest a great deal of emotional energy, and nothing may come out of it. There are no guarantees. So, unless one is fairly committed and willing to make that investment, don't do it. It really is a serious reminder. Ms. Goldenberg, thank you for your advice. We are looking forward to more publications of your work in the future. Finally, thank you for watching the documentary.